This class is concerned with communications. Communications is often referred to as an exchange of information. This exchange of information can be an idea, a thought, a feeling, an emotion, or it could be the outcome of some statistical analysis. The company or a company may take some data and analyze the data using some technique, some appropriate technique, and thereby convert the data into information. Then the information is shared, it's communicated to interested parties. Communications is an integral part of our lives. We need communications. We need it to grow, we need it to develop, we need it to challenge our capabilities. We need to be able to communicate to find out what others are doing and thinking, and to contribute ideas to the whole process of human development. We all contribute some ideas about some aspect of life. We receive ideas, we analyze the ideas, we try to develop the ideas. So we are constantly in the process of looking at information flows. We're looking at the information that flows down the channel to us, and we are further analyzing that information. Now, communications in organizations. Well, organizations will not survive without communications. This is vital for their success. If an organization has poor communications, then it will be hampered in its efforts to be efficient. It will be hampered in its efforts to meet customer needs and customers' wants, the requirements of the market. So if an organization has poor communications, it will not prosper. Organizations need good communications, not just with the outside world, with the customers and with the stakeholders that are on the outside, the suppliers of raw materials and the various agencies that the company depends on, but it also needs good communications internally, so that the various sections of the business understand what each of them are doing. It's imperative, it's incredibly important that, let's say, the accounts section reports to the stores about stock holding and to ensure that there is efficient stock holding and stock holding management. It's imperative that the stores communicates with marketing in the event of there being an increase in sales, that there is sufficient raw materials in the stores. It's essential that the marketing section communicates with production to make sure that the facilities are available to manufacture the product that's being required by the market. So there must be good communications flowing throughout the system. Communications can help management perform their basic functions. For example, planning the business. Planning is essential if the organization is to move from one time period successfully into the next time period, then there must be good and adequate planning. And the planning involves good communications between the managers and between the various sections. And it involves analysis of external data, perhaps customer analysis, customer questionnaires, feedback from customers on their experiences and so on. So there must be good planning. There must be good organizing within the business, and communications is essential for there being good organization. When an organization is not functioning properly, the chances are managers and personnel within the various sections will communicate this. They will see how improvements can be made, and they will channel that information to the management, who can reorganize and change functions. Now that's just one way in which organization is important. Organization can be in the way customers are queried as to their needs. It could be in terms of the way in which the sales force is configured and operates. So it can be on various fronts. There's an element of commanding. Managers need to command. They need to say what is required and to see it through. They can't be half-hearted, but they can only do that if they have effective communications, if the message is clearly understood. There is the transmitter, the person saying the message, delivering the message, and there is the receiver, the person receiving the message, and there must be no ambiguity in the message. The message must be clear so that the commands can be clearly understood. And there must be cooperation. If there is information flowing in the system and one section is rejecting the information, they don't accept the logic of what's been said, or they don't accept that they should follow this particular set of guidelines, then there will be a breakdown in the organization. So communications helps in making sure that cooperation takes place. And coordinating. Coordinating is important because that's what management do. They coordinate all of the various sections. They try to coordinate the production of the product or the service with the resources required, and they look at the orders that are coming in to ensure that they are, to some extent, they are synchronized. They mesh in a way that they can be done, they can be delivered, and that the resources, the human resources and the non-human resources within the business, can be organized in a way to meet the requirements of the order. Some of you may recognize what we've just got there as Henry Fayle's function of management, which is the subject of a separate video. Now, communications in organizations. Well, organizations must ensure that they communicate effectively with stakeholders to promote a smooth flow of information being transmitted to the employees. Well, the employees are stakeholders. So it's important that information is passed to the various stakeholders, and the employees are an important stakeholder. These are the people who work for the business, who depend on the business for their livelihoods. So it's essential that the employees have good information and that the organization communicates this information effectively to its staff, to its employees, but also to the suppliers of raw materials, the suppliers of specialist machinery, or the suppliers of utilities to the business. They should know how the business is doing, what the likely demand will be in the future, what the supply will be in the future. So they should know about the business, and it's important that the business communicates this effectively. Sorry, I've got to skip back to Henry Fayle for a second. Customers should also be informed about the business. Often this is done in the form of effective advertising and marketing campaigns. The customers are told how well the business is doing and how it grew in the last 6 months, or the last quarter, what products it has in the pipeline, what markets it's producing in, and what markets it's selling in. So customers are aware that the organization is reputable and it's doing well, so that the customers want to be seen to be supporters of that particular organization. People like winners. The shareholders are obviously stakeholders as well. The shareholders are the owners of the business, but there may be many shareholders, so that each individual shareholder is not significant. But nonetheless, the shareholders should be kept informed about how the business is doing, the plans the business has, the type of products, innovation, what changes it proposes to make in the coming accounting period, and so on. So another important stakeholder. And finally, the government. The government has an interest in the business because the government wants to see employment. It wants to see employment increase. It wants to see the business being successful and creating wealth within the community. And of course the government is interested in tax revenue. So the government is also a stakeholder, and it's important that the government is also aware of how the business is doing. Large organizations have many levels of hierarchy in which a constant flow of communications is vital. So in large organizations, communications is absolutely vital. In very large organizations, companies can seem totally different from one section to the next. But they must be unified, they must be held together, and the way the organizations are held together is by having effective communications. So it should have effective communications between, for example, workers and managers. The managers should have roughly the same view of the organization. The managers should have the same information. Their role, their importance should be clear to them, and the workers should understand what the managers are trying to do. There should also be good communications between the organization and its customers. It may be communications about the price of the product, the future price of the product, innovations to the product, changes that have been made that are in the customer's interest. So it's important that the organization and customers have good communications. It's also important that the customers can contact the organization, perhaps make recommendations about the product or criticize the product. If the product is faulty or does not do what the customers think it should do, there should be good communications between them. And of course there should be good communications between the organization and the community. Organizations exist within the community. They don't exist in a vacuum. They exist within the community, so they have an obligation to ensure that they support the local community. Supported in terms of perhaps not creating pollution, not creating environmental damage, supporting it also perhaps by being involved with the community, looking at the concerns of the community and seeing what it can do to help. Employees within organizations must be able to effectively communicate in order to get jobs done quickly and efficiently. It's important that employees can communicate. They can communicate with each other or with their line manager. So it's very important that employees have good channels of communication. For example, without good communications, employees would be uninformed of business objectives. So without good communications, the employees have no idea what the business is trying to do, or where the business is going, or what their likely employment prospects are within that business. So it's important that the employees should be kept informed. So without good communications, the employees would be confused. Without good communications, the employees would not properly understand their roles and responsibilities. within the organization. It's through communications that the employees know what they're doing and why the particular task is important and why it should be performed in a particular way. All of this has to be communicated effectively to the employee. It's also the case that employees would not be informed about career development opportunities. Sometimes there may be internal promotions available within the organization, and if the company doesn't communicate this through some medium to the employees, it's perhaps ruling out good candidates for that particular job, that particular role. So there must be a channel of communication, a way for the company to communicate effectively with its employees. The employees may not be interested in applying for particular roles, but there may be some that the employees would be suited for, and it would be advantageous to the business to get the employees to change roles from one role to the next and fill some particular task. But that must be communicated. It's not just going to happen. It's also important to have good communications so that employee training and development needs are met. There wouldn't be employee and development needs if there wasn't good communications. Quite simply, the organization must identify training needs. They must think if the workers had extra skills, they would be more productive. So they must identify that, and then they must communicate it. They must communicate it to the staff involved, to the workers involved. They must communicate the existence of training programs. They must get the workers involved. Making any changes to organizational development, policy, procedures or goals would not be possible unless there was good communications. So changing the company policy or how the work is conducted or how the plant is laid out, getting changes within the organization would be bordering on impossible if there wasn't good communications. Good communications means that the workers understand what's happening and they would participate because they are informed. The importance of communications. Well, the importance of communications within the workplace. Good communications encourages employee motivation as the employees are aware of their expectations. Good communications helps motivation. It means the workers are informed, they know what's happening, they're treated with respect. It's their livelihoods, they need to have employment, and the company respects them and keeps them informed as to the progress or problems that the company is facing. There are usually a variety of information networks, and good communications improves decision making. The variety of information networks could be very informal, where workers simply meet and chat about how the work is going and what improvements could be made and how certain tasks could be better organized. They may just have a brief word with the line manager, who may in turn talk to the divisional manager and so on. So there are various information networks ranging from the very informal through to works councils to quality circles where people once a week, let's say, go and talk about particular aspects of work. And all of this is dependent on good communications. Good communications allows for a better atmosphere at work. There's more socialization and more contact between the employees and managers. Good communications fosters good relationships, generally speaking. So there's a better feeling about work. The workers don't dread going to work. It's a community, and good communications helps to foster that community feeling. And of course, good communications helps managers to carry out management functions and duties. Good communications means that the managers are able to instruct the workers as to what needs to be done. The managers in turn can be briefed by the directors of the business as to what needs to be done. There is good communications, and it's important that there are good communications channels, ways in which the communications can flow from one party to the next. So communications within the business is of critical importance. Good communications is essential for business success. Okay then, so that's all I'm going to do in this session. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to say thank you for watching.